The night my boyfriend told me, "You're dead when we get home," there was a billionaire sitting at the next table quietly listening. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his story. I just knew I was in trouble, and I was completely alone. At least that's what I thought. Let me take you back to that night, because everything that came after, the escape, the courtroom, the new life, even the love story, started with one clumsy moment and a glass of red wine. We were in this fancy Italian restaurant, the kind of place with white tablecloths and candles on every table, a pianist in the corner playing something soft and romantic, couples talking in low voices like they were in a movie. I had put on my bright green dress, the one I saved up for the one I hoped would make me feel pretty again. I wanted it to be a good night. I wanted to see a glimpse of the man I met 4 years earlier, the one who brought me flowers, and told me I was smart, not the man who had slowly replaced him. And then I knocked over my wine. I watched it tip in slow motion like the universe was giving me one last chance to grab it. And I still failed the stem, sliding out of my fingers, the red spilling across the white tablecloth, like blood soaking into the fabric, splashing onto my dress and dripping onto the floor. My whole body went cold. My heart just stopped. I knew what was coming. I looked up at Derek. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. His knuckles went white around his fork. I watched that darkness slide over his face, the one I'd been trying to avoid all evening. "I'm so sorry," I blurted, reaching for my napkin, dabbing frantically at the stain, making it worse. "I'm so sorry. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry." He gave me this little smile that didn't touch his eyes. Here we go, I thought. He leaned forward slightly, not enough for anyone else to notice, and dropped his voice into that low, dangerous tone that made my stomach twist into knots. "You're dead when we get home." 5 words. Just 5. But they landed like a punch right to my chest. If it were you sitting there with red wine all over your dress, and someone you love saying that to you in that voice, what would you have done? Would you have walked out, caused a scene, called for help? Or would you have done what I did, which was pretend it didn't happen, and hope it somehow wouldn't be as bad as last time? I laughed this weak little laugh, like he'd made a joke that didn't quite land. "It was an accident," I whispered. "I'm sorry, I really am." "You can't do anything right," he murmured, still keeping that fake smile on for the room, taking a slow sip of his own wine. Clumsy, stupid, making a fool of me in front of all these people. The thing about emotional abuse is from the outside, it looks like nothing. The people at the next table were laughing, raising their glasses. The pianist kept playing something pretty. To anyone else, it was just a woman who spilled her drink, a guy making a joke. The waiter rushed over, nervous, glancing between us. "I can replace the tablecloth if you'd like," he offered. "Or we can move you to another table." "That won't be necessary," Derek said smoothly, switching to his polished public voice. "Just bring us another bottle of Chianti. My girlfriend is a bit clumsy tonight." He said it lightly, but he put this subtle emphasis on the word clumsy, like a little knife only I could feel. The waiter gave me a quick, worried look, but he nodded and walked away. I felt shame burn through my chest. Even strangers could see something was off. But what were they going to do? Really step in and save me? Tell him to be nice. At the next table, a man in a blue shirt looked up from his laptop. At the time, I barely registered him. Just another businessman, eating alone and working through dinner. You know the type. I didn't know his name then. I didn't know that his whole childhood would be playing in the back of his mind while he watched my hands shake. Later, he told me exactly what he saw, exactly what he felt. How I reminded him of his mother, the way I seemed to fold in on myself. How Derek's public charm and private menace felt too familiar. How those 5 words, "You're dead when we get home," pulled him straight back into being 10 years old, hiding in his bedroom while his father yelled. Back then, though, he was just a stranger, And I was just a woman trying not to cry at a table I already knew I would pay for later. Dinner dragged on in this awful tight silence. Derek made small comments only I could hear, little stabs, to remind me of what was waiting. My appetite was gone, my pasta cold on the plate. I kept replaying that one sentence in my head, trying to predict which version of punishment I'd get when we got home. When he finally stood up and said he was going to the restroom, my shoulders dropped half an inch, like someone had taken a brick off my chest. I didn't relax, not really, but I could breathe for a second. Then the man from the next table stood up. He walked toward me slowly, like he knew he was approaching a scared animal that might bolt. He stopped at the edge of our table at a distance that didn't feel threatening, and spoke quietly. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said. "My name is Julian." He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. His movements were steady. Mine were not. "I couldn't help overhearing what your boyfriend said earlier," he continued, voice calm but serious. "If you ever need help, I can provide it. You don't have to explain anything right now, just please take this." I looked at the card like it was a grenade. White, cardstock, simple black font. Julian Parker. CEO Parker Technologies. A phone number. An email. I started because none of this made sense. Because billionaires don't just walk up to women like me and offer help. "You don't have to decide anything now," he said, gently, cutting off my apology like he'd seen it coming. "If you need help leaving, if you need a safe place, if you need a job, I can arrange all of it immediately. No questions asked. That's my personal cell number. It's on 24 hours a day." "Why would you do that?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. He looked at me with this expression that was part pain, part determination. "Because someone did it for my mother once," he said quietly. "And I promised myself that if I ever could, I'd pay that forward." My hand shook as I took the card. I slipped it into my purse just as Derek walked back toward the table. Julian straightened up and shifted his tone. "Excuse me," he said to Derek with a casual smile. "I was just asking your girlfriend if she knew where the restrooms were. I'm new to this place." Derek gave him that narrow-eyed look he had when he was assessing a threat, but he nodded toward the back. "Down the hall past the bar." "Thanks," Julian said. Then returned to his table, closing his laptop like nothing had happened. We paid the bill. Derek's tip was a little lower than usual because they should have cleared the table faster. We walked out into the night, his hand clamped on my elbow, a little too tight, as we crossed the parking lot to his silver sedan. I got in. He drove in this tight, silent way he had when he was really angry, rolling through yellow lights a little too fast. "You humiliated me tonight," he said finally, eyes fixed on the road. "I'm sorry," I murmured, staring at my hands. "Sorry doesn't fix anything," he snapped. He turned into our apartment complex, pulled into his usual spot a little too sharply. "You're lucky I'm tired. We'll discuss this tomorrow." That's what he did. He spread the punishment out. The threat tonight. The silent treatment, the anxiety. Then the explosion later when I'd had enough time to marinate in dread. Back in the apartment, he dropped onto the couch and turned on the TV. Turning the volume up like I wasn't even there, I went straight to our bedroom, closed the door quietly, and pulled out my jewelry box. I took the business card out of my purse. Julian Parker, CEO, Parker Technologies. I'd heard of the company. They made hospital software systems that literally saved lives. Corporate golden boy, big donations, tech magazines. That kind of guy, that kind of money. Why me? I turned the card over in my fingers. Front, back, front again. I heard Derek laugh at something on the TV, loud and sudden, and my whole body flinched. I hid the card in the back of the jewelry box, behind some cheap earrings he'd bought me one Christmas. Like an afterthought. It felt like hiding a loaded gun or a parachute. I changed into my nightgown, got into bed, stared at the ceiling. For the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine a different life. One where spilling red wine was just an accident, not a death sentence. One where my first reflex wasn't, "How much trouble am I in?" but, "Oh no, I need club soda." The card sat there hidden, but present like a door I hadn't known existed. Now let me ask you something and answer honestly in your head. If a stranger like that approached you, offered you an escape with no strings attached, would you trust it? Or would you do what I did at first? Freeze doubt and try to survive one more day. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. For a second half awake, I let myself pretend things were normal. Then my brain replayed his words from the night before, and I tensed up before I even opened my eyes. He appeared in the doorway with 2 mugs set one on my nightstand, like a normal boyfriend. "I'm heading to the warehouse early," he said. "We'll talk about your behavior when I get home." "Okay," I whispered, because what else was I supposed to say? When he left, the silence in the apartment was loud. I lay there for 20 minutes staring at the ceiling, feeling that invisible weight pressing down on my chest. Same pattern, different day. Then my phone buzzed. "Carmen, coffee. I need to complain about my date last night." Carmen was my coworker, and basically my only real friend left. Derek tried to push her out of my life like he did with everyone, but Carmen was persistent. She'd show up at my desk with coffee, drag me to lunch, text me memes. She refused to disappear. I almost typed, "Can't busy," because I heard Derek's voice in my head saying, "What do you need to talk about without me there?" But he was at work, and I needed to breathe. "Meet at Maria's in 20, I typed. On my way, she wrote back. At the coffee shop, she launched into this story about a guy who spent their entire date talking about crypto and his passive income. I laughed, really laughed, and felt some of the tightness in my chest loosen just a little. "Your turn," she said, eventually narrowing her eyes at me. "How was your big fancy dinner last night?" "It was fine." I lied. She didn't buy it. "Tanya," she said, leaning forward. "Real talk. When's the last time you were actually happy?" That question hit me so hard, I almost dropped my cup. Tears burned the backs of my eyes, and I blinked them away. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You're not fine," she said gently. "You haven't been fine in a long time. I see the way you flinch when your phone rings. The way you check the time every 3 minutes like you're going to get in trouble for breathing. That's not normal, babe. You don't understand," I muttered, wrapping my hands around the mug to stop them from shaking. "Then help me understand," she said softly. I stared down into my coffee. The words came out before I could stop them. "There was a man at the restaurant last night," I said quietly. "He heard Derek say something. He gave me a business card, said he could help me if I ever needed to leave." Carmen's face changed immediately. All jokes gone. Laser focus. "Help how?" she asked. "He said if I wanted to go, he'd arrange a safe place," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "A job. Whatever I needed. He's some CEO, Julian Parker." Her jaw dropped. "Wait," she said. "The Julian Parker like Parker Technologies hospital software on the cover of magazines, that guy." "I don't know," I said. "I looked him up this morning. It's definitely him. Articles about him growing up with a single mom. After she left an abusive marriage, his company, his charity work. It fits what he said, but, I mean, why would someone like that care about me?" "Tanya," she said slowly. "That's huge. Did you call him?" "No," I said quickly. "What if it's some kind of trick? What if Derek finds out? What if it makes everything worse? Or what if it's the way out you've been too scared to look for?" She countered. "If it were me, I'd call. Worst case, you hang up and block him if it feels weird. Best case, your life changes. You know what I mean." My phone buzzed on the table. "Derek, where are you?" My whole body went rigid. "I have to go," I said, fumbling for my bag. "Tanya, wait," Carmen said, grabbing my wrist. "Just think about calling that number, okay? I can't watch you disappear." I nodded, texted back coffee with Carmen. Home soon, and drove back to the apartment on autopilot. The moment I walked in, I went straight to the bedroom and pulled out the jewelry box. The card was still there, tucked behind the earrings. Waiting. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. Typed his name into the search bar. Article after article popped up pictures of Julian in suits at conferences, shaking hands with hospital administrators, standing with his arm around his mom in front of a school she ran. Interviews where he talked about his childhood, about shelters, about the lawyer who worked for free, so he hadn't lied. He was who he said he was. He'd lived what he said he'd lived. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat as I picked up my phone and stared at his number. 10 whole minutes I sat there, thinking about Derek's face at the restaurant, hearing his voice saying, "You're dead when we get home." Thinking about Carmen asking when I was last happy and not having an answer. Thinking about that green dress and how small I'd felt in it. Then I inhaled and hit call. 2 rings. "This is Julian," he answered, same calm tone as the night before. My throat locked. For a second I couldn't say anything. "If you can't talk right now, just stay on the line," he said, instantly adjusting. "I'll understand." I finally forced out, "It's the woman from the restaurant, last night." There was this small pause then. "I'm really glad you called. Are you safe right now?" "He's at work," I said. "I have a few hours." "Okay," he said. "Can you meet me somewhere public?" "There's a coffee shop on 5th and Main Riverside Cafe. Do you know it?" "Yes," I said. "I can be there in 30. "I'll be there," he said. "If anything changes, hang up and only contact me when you're safe." "All right." "Okay," I whispered. I texted Derek that I was going to the grocery store, grabbed my keys, and drove across town with my hands shaking on the wheel. When I got to the cafe, I picked a table near the window so I could see the parking lot just in case. I kept asking myself, what am I doing? What if this is insane? What if it's worse? But under that, there was something else. Hope. Thin, shaky, but there. Julian walked in right on time. No laptop this time, just him. Jeans, blue sweater still. That CEO posture, but not stiff. He spotted me immediately and came over with this gentle smile. "Thank you for calling," he said. As he sat down, "Can I get you anything?" "I'm okay." I lied. Again, he didn't push. He just let the silence settle for a minute, like he knew I needed time for my nervous system to stop screaming. "Why are you doing this?" I blurted out finally. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he said quietly. "I know what I heard last night. I know what I saw. And I know how hard it is to leave someone like that because my mother did it." "Your mother?" I said. He nodded. "My dad was a successful businessman," he said. "Charming in public, terrifying at home. It took my mom 3 years to leave. When she did, we had nothing but we were safe. A lawyer helped her for free. A landlord waived a deposit. A teacher bought me school supplies. Those people changed our lives. I promised myself that if I ever had the resources, I'd do that for someone else, maybe for a lot of someone else's." He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder, set it on the table between us. "This is what I can offer," he said. Inside were pictures of an apartment building and address, a job description, a business card for a lawyer, a phone number for a crisis counselor, information about restraining orders, even a contact for a moving service. "I own a secure apartment building with 24-hour security," he explained. "If you choose, you can move in today, rent-free for as long as you need. I also have an opening for an executive assistant at my company. It pays well, full benefits, including therapy coverage. You could start as soon as you're ready." "This is too much," I whispered. "I can't just take all this." "Why not?" he asked. Like it was a genuine question. "Because I don't deserve it," I said. "Because you don't know me. What if I'm not good at the job? What if I mess up? What if—" "Let me worry about the job," he said gently. "Everyone deserves to be safe. Everyone deserves a chance. You're not taking advantage of me. I'm offering. It's up to you. He nudged the folder closer to me. I'm not going to pressure you, he said. This has to be your choice. But I want you to know you have options. You are not trapped, even if it feels like it. All you have to do is say yes. We sat there in that little cafe with people around us talking about their brunch plans and weekend trips, while my entire life was sitting in a manila folder on the table. I thought about going back to the apartment waiting for Derek to come home, the argument that would definitely happen. Eventually, the cycle I knew too well. I pictured myself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, still apologizing for existing. Or I could do something terrifying and step into the unknown. Okay, I said finally. Okay, I'll accept your help. His whole posture relaxed. All right, he said. A real smile breaking through. Then let's get you out. And this is the part where everything started moving fast. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. We called Carmen. I didn't even have to explain much. I'm leaving him, I said. I need your help. I'm on my way, she said. Where are you? Within an hour, Julian had a moving service arranged, his security team briefed, and keys to a new apartment in my hand. We drove back to the place I'd been calling home, but this time we didn't go in quietly. 2 movers, 2 plainclothes security guards, Carmen's little car behind us. You grab essentials only, Julian said as we pulled up. Clothes, documents, personal items, things he won't immediately notice are gone. Everything else we can replace. Walking into that apartment knowing I was leaving for good felt surreal. My hands shook, but I moved fast. Closet drawer, bathroom, important papers. Carmen buzzed around beside me, stuffing things into boxes, making dumb jokes to keep me from collapsing. Don't forget your toothbrush, she called. And your chargers. And those yoga pants you basically live in. I laughed for real in the middle of the chaos. In less than 30 minutes, everything that mattered to me was in boxes and bags. I stood in the living room, looking at the couch where I'd cried quietly, the kitchen where I'd made dinner with a knot in my stomach, the hallway where I learned how to listen for his footsteps. I walked into the kitchen, took my key off my ring, and set it on the counter with a note. I'm leaving. Don't contact me. Don't look for me. That was it. No explanation, no apology. We walked out. I got in Carmen's car. As we pulled away, something in my chest unclenched. My eyes filled with tears. But these were different. Not fear. Not even sadness. Relief. You did it, Carmen said, squeezing my hand at a red light. I am so freaking proud of you right now. The new apartment was bright and airy on the 8th floor, with a view of the city. There was a doorman who smiled and called me Ms. Brooks. The lobby smelled like fresh flowers. Inside my unit, there was already furniture, clean sheets, towels, even food in the fridge. He really did think of everything, Carmen said, looking around. My phone buzzed. You made it. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll handle everything else. You're safe now. It was Julian. Thank you for everything, I texted back. Then I went into my settings and blocked Derek's number. Watching that little toggle switch flip felt like lifting a boulder. That night, I slept straight through. No fake sleep, no half listening for the key in the door, no lying awake rehearsing apologies in my head, just sleep. The next morning, sunlight hit my face, and for a second I panicked, expecting to be late for something, expecting to hear him shout my name. Then I remembered. He didn't have a key to this place. He didn't know this address. He had no power here. There were 15 missed calls from his number, all blocked. I stared at them for a moment, then erased the log. Carmen had texted, "First day of your new life. You've got this." Julian had texted, too. "Take your time getting ready. Office address is 450 Commerce Street, 15th floor. Security knows you're coming. No rush." I showered without someone banging on the door, asking what was taking so long. I chose gray slacks and a bright blue blouse without hearing his voice in my head criticize my outfit. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Tired, yes, but with a tiny spark in her eyes. The Parker Technologies building was all glass and steel, the kind that reflects the sky. Inside, everything was sleek and modern, but the security guard at the desk smiled like I was welcome there, not like I was an intrusion. "Miss Brooks," he said, "Mr. Parker told us to expect you. Elevator to the 15th, someone will meet you at the doors." Upstairs, a woman in her 30s with a warm smile was waiting, hand outstretched. "Tanya, hi, I'm Lauren, head of HR," she said. "Julian asked me to get you settled. Come on, let's get you a badge and a desk." As we walked, she dropped her voice. "Julian mentioned you're leaving a difficult situation," she said gently. "I want you to know we take employee well-being seriously here. We have mental health support, legal resources. Everything is confidential and covered. You're not alone." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, almost broke me right there. She opened the door to a small office with a desk computer and a ridiculous view. "This will be yours," she said. "You'll be supporting Julian directly. Don't worry, he's demanding, but in a good way." "Why is he doing all this for me?" I asked quietly. "He doesn't even know me," Lauren smiled. "He believes if you have resources, you use them to help people," she said. "His mom left an abusive marriage when he was a kid. This isn't charity for him, it's personal." Julian appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, dressed professionally, but smiling like a real human being, not a corporate robot. "How was your first night?" he asked. "Quiet," I said. And that one word held so much meaning he nodded like he understood. "Good," he said. "Let's talk about the job." He was clear. This was a real job with real responsibilities, not a pity position. I'd be managing his calendar, preparing materials for meetings, coordinating communications while he was traveling. Being the person who kept chaos from swallowing him whole. "What if I mess it up?" I asked. "Then we learn and adjust," he said. Like it was the simplest thing in the world. Everyone starts somewhere. "I'm not hiring you as a favor, Tanya. I genuinely think you can do this." Before I left his office, he added one more thing. "I've set up an appointment for you tomorrow with a therapist, Dr. Rachel Kim," he said. "She specializes in helping people recover from abusive relationships. Sessions are covered by our health plan." "I don't know if I'm ready for therapy," I admitted. "That's okay," he said. "All I'm asking is that you give it one try. Leaving is step one. Healing is a longer journey. You don't have to walk it alone." I went to that appointment mostly because I felt like I owed it to him to at least show up. I walked out, realizing I owed it to myself. Dr. Kim's office was warm and lived in with books and soft lighting, and a box of tissues that she just slid toward me at one point like she already knew. "Julian gave me a basic outline," she said. "But I'd like to hear your story in your own words. What brought you here?" "I left my boyfriend a few days ago," I said. "He never hit me, so sometimes I feel crazy even saying this out loud. But he controlled everything. He threatened me. He made me feel like I was nothing." She nodded. "That's emotional abuse," she said. "It's very real and often more confusing because people think if there are no bruises, it doesn't count." "I thought I'd feel more relieved," I said, wiping at my eyes. "But I feel scared guilty, like maybe I overreacted." "You've been trained to doubt yourself," she said, "to carry blame for things that weren't your fault. That conditioning doesn't go away overnight. But we can work on it. We can rebuild your sense of self, help you recognize red flags, set boundaries. It takes time." Session after session, she helped me untangle the knots in my brain. We talked about the little ways Derek had isolated me, the jokes that weren't jokes, the way I'd slowly stopped doing anything that might set him off. She named things I'd never named, and something about naming them made them lose some of their power. Meanwhile, my life at Parker Tech became its own kind of therapy. People treated me like a capable adult. Julian would come out of a meeting and say things like, "You saved me in there. I would have forgotten that detail," and mean it. I started catching scheduling mistakes before they happened, anticipating what he'd need for big presentations, becoming the person people relied on. At night in my quiet apartment, I cooked dinner for watched shows because I liked them, not because someone else picked them. Carmen would come over with takeout and gossip from our old workplace. My mom visited and burst into tears when she saw how different I looked, how my laugh didn't sound forced, and slowly I started noticing Julian in a different way. Not as the billionaire who rescued me, but as a man who worked late, drank too much coffee, sometimes forgot to eat, and had this dry sense of humor that crept out in meetings. We'd grab coffee and end up talking about movies instead of work. He told me about his mom becoming a school principal, about volunteering with her at shelters when he was 16. "I used to play with the kids while she talked to the women," he said. "It changed everything for me. It's why I built this company the way I did." He invited me to a charity gala one Friday for a women's shelter his company supported. "I thought you might like to see where some of the money goes," he said. "No pressure. If it's too much, you can say no." I said yes. I didn't have anything to wear, so he handed me a company card and told me to get something that made me feel good. Carmen came shopping with me, spinning in circles in the dressing room, when I stepped out in a blue floor-length gown. "You're going to stun him," she said. "And don't even pretend you don't like him. I hear how you say his name." "It's not like that," I insisted. "He's my boss, and he helped me escape. There's a power dynamic, it's complicated." "Sure," she said, rolling her eyes. "And I only watch reality TV for the social commentary." At the gala, he met me in the lobby, and for a second he just stared. "You look amazing," he said, sounding genuinely taken aback. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I said, because he did. Tux, no tie, a little less CEO, and a little more man. Inside, I met the director of the shelter, some of the board members. People came up to Julian to thank him for his donations and his time. A woman pulled me aside and said, "Julian is one of the few donors who actually shows up and listens. You know that you're lucky to work with him." "I know," I said, watching him across the room, laughing at something a volunteer said, looking completely at ease. We danced later. Slow, nothing dramatic, just two people moving to the music. I was hyper-aware of every point of contact, his hand on my back, my hand in his. I don't think he realized how big of a deal it was for me to feel safe in someone's arms again. "Thank you," I whispered at one point. "For what?" he asked. For everything," I said. "For the card, for the apartment, for the job, for treating me like a person and not like a project." "You saved yourself," he said quietly. "I just opened a door. You walked through it. You've done all the hard work." His words settled into my chest and stayed there. If you're watching this and thinking this sounds like a romance movie, I get it. But real life is messier. Healing isn't linear. And just when I started to think maybe, just maybe, I could have something like a normal life, the past tried to claw its way back in. One Tuesday afternoon, security called up to Julian's office. "Sir, we have a Derek Hayes in the lobby asking for a Ms. Brooks," the guard said. "He's getting agitated." I felt the world tilt. I hadn't heard his name spoken out loud in weeks. Julian looked at me immediately. "You don't have to see him," he said. "You don't owe him anything. We'll handle it." Before they could escort him out, though, Derek lied his way past the first checkpoint, saying he was there for an interview. By the time security realized there was no such interview, he'd taken the elevator up. I heard his voice in the hallway before I saw him. "Tanya," he shouted. "I know you're here. Get out here right now." My body reacted before my brain could. My heart hammered. My hands went cold. My vision tunneled. It was like I was back in that apartment waiting for the explosion. Julian stepped out of his office and put himself between Derek and my desk instantly. "You need to leave," Julian said, calm but firm. "Now." "Who the hell are you?" Derek snapped, eyes jumping from Julian to the glass walls, taking in the fancy office, the view. "Where is she?" I stood up because I didn't want to hide, not this time, even though my knees felt weak. "Tanya," he said, his voice dropping into that wounded tone he used when he was trying to play the victim. "Please, I just want to talk. You disappeared. You didn't give me a chance to fix things." Julian pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police," he said evenly. "You're violating a restraining order and trespassing in a private building." "It's not like that," Derek insisted, trying to push past him, but Julian didn't move. "I just want 5 minutes with her. 5 minutes, that's all." Security was already on their way, but in that moment, it was just the three of us, and the echoes of my old life crashing into my new one. "Tanya," he said, eyes finally landing on me. "Everything I did for you after all these years, and you just walked out. You owe me a conversation." Old me would have folded right there. Old me would have apologized for leaving, for upsetting him, for not making it easier. New me thought about the nights I cried quietly, so he wouldn't hear the way my world shrank to fit his moods. The threat in the restaurant, the card in my jewelry box, the keys in my hand as I left. "No," I said. My voice shook, but it was audible. "I don't owe you anything. Leave Derek. Don't come back. We're done." "You can't throw away 4 years like that," he snapped. "Where would you even be without me?" "Happier," I said softly, but loud enough for him to hear. "So much happier." That's when security grabbed him, one on each arm. He tried to jerk free, shouting, "This isn't over, Tanya. You hear me? This isn't over." The elevator doors closed on his face, twisted with rage, and the hallway went quiet. And that's when my body decided it was too much. My breathing sped up, shallow and fast. My hands tingled. My chest felt tight, like there was a weight on it. Tears blurred my vision and wouldn't fall. Julian guided me back into his office, sat me down on the couch, and knelt in front of me again, like he had the night he gave me the card. Only this time we both knew each other. "Look at me," he said gently. "Breathe with me. In through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. We did that again and again until the edges of the room stopped spinning. His hands were warm around mine, his voice steady, his presence grounding. "I'm sorry," I whispered when I could talk again. "I hate that this still happens to me." "Don't apologize," he said firmly. "You have nothing to be sorry for. You did something incredibly brave today. You stood up to him. That's huge." "What if he comes back?" I asked, voice shaky. "What if he finds my new place somehow?" "Security is already filing reports," he said. "The building where you live has your info flagged. He won't get past the lobby. The police are on their way to arrest him for violating the restraining order and trespassing here. You are not alone in this. You have a team now." Do you think that's fair, by the way? That someone has to have a billionaire CEO and a corporate security team behind them before the system really starts working the way it should? I struggle with that sometimes. The police came, took statements, reviewed the footage. Derek was arrested in the parking garage. The prosecutor's office called to say they'd be adding new charges. There would be a court date. That night, Julian drove me home, walked me to my door, waited until he saw me walk inside. I cried again for all the fear that had just been squeezed out of me. Then something shifted. The case built quickly. The prosecutor was a woman who took my situation seriously, who didn't ask, "Why didn't you leave sooner?" but "How can we make this stick?" Dr. Kim helped me prepare emotionally. Julian and my mom and Carmen promised they'd be in the courtroom. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, replaying questions in my mind, imagining his face, imagining freezing on the stand. At 2 in the morning, I texted Julian. "I can't sleep. Too nervous about tomorrow." He replied almost immediately. Want some company? I make pretty good hot chocolate. 20 minutes later, he was at my door with a grocery bag, cocoa powder, and marshmallows sticking out of the top. We sat on the couch, mugs in hand, talking about everything and nothing. Our favorite childhood cartoons, the weirdest thing we'd eaten, his mom's habit of overwatering plants, until the sky started to lighten. What if I can't get the words out tomorrow? I asked. What if I freeze or start crying or... Then you take a breath, he said. The prosecutor will guide you. I'll be sitting right behind you. So will your mom and Carmen. You've already survived the hardest part, Tanya. Tomorrow is about making sure he doesn't get the chance to do this to you again. In court, I sat on the witness stand, hands trembling. But when I looked out at the benches, I saw them. My mom, tears in her eyes but steady. Carmen, chin up like she was daring anyone to hurt me. Julian, calm, supportive, nodding when our eyes met. I told the truth. About the restaurant. About you're dead when we get home. About the years of small, constant cuts to my self-worth. About the control, the isolation, the trackers on my phone. About him showing up at my job, screaming in the lobby. Derek's lawyer tried to twist it. Isn't it true you left without giving my client a chance to talk? He asked. Didn't he deserve a conversation? I left a note that said I was leaving and not to contact me, I replied. That's more than I owed him. Isn't it also true that you accepted free housing and a job from a very wealthy man almost immediately after leaving? He pressed. Do you see how that might look like taking advantage? Julian offered me safety, I said steadily. I accepted his help and I work very hard for my job. I've earned my place at his company. He smirked. Conveniently, you are now dating your wealthy boss, he said. Objection, the prosecutor said. Relevance. Sustained, the judge said. Move on, counselor. After hours of testimony, the judge delivered the verdict. Guilty. On all charges. Harassment violating a restraining order. Trespassing. Sentence, a year in county jail. 3 years probation. 0 contact with me. Mandatory counseling. Outside the courthouse, my mom wrapped me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. It's over, she said, crying into my hair. It's really over. It wasn't magically all healed, but that chapter at least was closed. That evening, Julian took me to the beach again. We walked along the shoreline as the sun went down, waves curling over our feet. How do you feel? He asked. Light, I said. Scared still a little, but mostly light. Free. We stopped facing the water. I looked at him and knew I had to say what had been building in my chest for months. When you first gave me that card, I said I thought it was too good to be true. I thought nobody was that kind without wanting something. But you've proved me wrong over and over. You've helped me without making me feel like a burden. You've given me space to heal. You've treated me like a partner, not like a project. He listened, eyes locked on mine. I want you to know, I continued, that what I feel for you now isn't just gratitude or trauma bonding or whatever people on the internet call it. I love you, Julian, and that terrifies me, but it's true. His eyes filled with tears. I love you too, Tanya, he said, hands coming up to cradle my face. I've loved you for a while now, honestly, but I wanted you to have time to figure out what you felt without pressure. I never wanted you to feel like you owed me love, because I helped you. We kissed, and for once it didn't feel like wrong timing or messy power dynamics or a mistake. It felt earned, slow, real. The months that followed were honestly some of the best of my life, not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. We still went to therapy. We still had hard days. Sometimes something small would trigger me, and I'd spiral, but now I had tools, and I had someone who would sit with me in it instead of using it against me. At work, I grew into my role. I designed a new project management system that made everything more efficient. Julian backed my plan, and put me in charge of rolling it out. I presented to the board, and they actually listened to me. Before, I'd been the girl who made copies. Now, I was the woman explaining how to save the company time and money. I started taking night classes to work toward a teaching degree, a dream I'd buried, because Derek said teachers didn't make enough money to be worth it. Julian encouraged it. "If that's what you want, we'll make it work," he said. "You'd be an amazing teacher." I got nominated for a National Rising Star Award for women in business. When my name was called as the winner, I stood on stage, trophy in hand, and told a room full of strangers that 6 months earlier I'd been a woman who was afraid to check her phone. And now I was here because someone offered me help, and I was desperate enough and brave enough to take it. Meanwhile, Julian took everything we'd been through and turned it into something bigger. He created the Second Chance Foundation using his money, but putting my name and my experience right in the center of its mission. Safe housing, job assistance therapy, legal support, a whole network built to give people what I had gotten without them needing a billionaire sitting at the next table. "Do you really have to name it after me?" I asked when he showed me the paperwork. "Yes," he said, "because your story will make other people believe it's possible." 6 months after that, on a hike at one of his favorite trails, he proposed. Not in a showy way. No flash mob, just the two of us on a mountain, a view stretching out for miles, him kneeling in the dirt with a ring in his hand. He said, "You walked into my life at one of the lowest points of yours, and somehow became the best thing that's ever happened to mine. Will you marry me?" I said yes. Obviously. 1 year, almost to the day after that wine glass tipped over, and he slid a card across a table. We stood in the Riverside Cafe again, the same one where I'd met him, scared out of my mind. And this time, the place was filled with people we loved. My mom, his parents, Carmen, Lauren from HR, Dr. Kim, the prosecutor from Derek's case, a few women. The foundation had already helped. Julian stood at the same table where he'd laid out the original folder, holding a small box. A year ago, he told everyone, "I sat here with Tanya and offered her a chance at a different life. She said yes, and she did the hard work of building that life. Today, in front of the people who walked that road with us, I want to ask her something else." He got down on one knee again just for fun, even though I already had his ring on my finger. "Tanya Brooks," he said, grinning. "Will you marry me again?" "Yes." I laughed, wiping tears from my face. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Everyone clapped and cheered, but he wasn't done. He handed me the small box. "Open it," he said. Inside was a key and a folded document. I unfolded it and felt my breath catch. The Tanya Brooks Resource Center, an old community center downtown, renovated and repurposed, now officially ours. A place for survivors to walk in and get everything they needed in one building. Job training, therapy, legal support, housing coordination. "You talked about wanting to do more to help people the way you were helped," he said. "The foundation bought the building and funded the programs. If you want it, you can run it. If you don't, it will still help people. But I hope you'll put your stamp on it." My mom hugged me, crying. His mom hugged me too. Carmen yelled, "I told you you were a superhero." A few weeks later, I walked into the finished center. Light streaming through big windows, soft chairs in the waiting area, a quiet room for kids to play while their parents met with advocates. On one wall was a plaque, the Tanya Brooks Resource Center, where second chances begin, founded in honor of all those who had the courage to leave, and in gratitude to those who helped them find their way. I ran my fingers over the words, and thought about that scared woman in the green dress, trying not to cry over a spilled glass of wine. My phone rang. First call of the day on the center's helpline. "Resource Center, this is Tanya," I answered. A woman's voice came through, shaking. "I need help," she said. "I'm scared to leave, but I'm more scared to stay." I took a breath. Steady, grounded. I understand, I said. I've been where you are. You're not alone, and we can help. Are you safe right now? He's at work, she said. Okay, I replied. Let's make a plan. And just like that, the worst chapter of my life became the beginning of someone else's second chance. So now I'm going to ask you the hard questions. If you were that man at the next table hearing someone hiss, "You're dead when we get home," would you step in, or would you tell yourself it was none of your business and keep eating your dinner? Do you think what Julian did was right, or does it scare you that one person with money and power can change someone's entire life like that? Should we really have to rely on random kindness from strangers to survive our relationships, or should our systems be doing more? And if you see yourself in my story, if any of this sounds uncomfortably familiar, the walking on eggshells, the constant apologies, the threats that don't leave bruises, please hear me. You're not overreacting, you're not crazy, and you're not alone. Emotional abuse is real. Fear is real. And you deserve more than just surviving day by day. There are hotlines, shelters online, resources. Sometimes even someone at the next table ready to help if you reach out. Taking that first step is terrifying, I know, but staying can be even more dangerous. If this story hit you in any way, if it made you angry or hopeful, or both, I want you to do 3 things for me. First, hit subscribe so these stories reach more people who might need to hear them. Second, share this video with someone you think might be living through something similar. You never know what that might spark. Third, drop a comment and tell me what you think. If it were you, what would you have done at that restaurant table? Do you think people like Julian have a responsibility to step in when they see abuse, or should they mind their own business? Have you ever seen someone step up for a stranger like that? Or have you been the one who needed that lifeline? Agree with me. Argue with me. Tell your own story. Ask questions. I read what you write. And who knows? Your comment might be the thing that makes someone realize they're not as trapped as they feel.